Lassie Farm here with an amazing short story called The Veldt by Ray Bradbury. And I always have loved this in the written form and also in the movie from 1969 starring Rod Steiger, Claire Bloom, some other people. It really is something. The Veldt. George, I wish you'd look at the nursery. What's wrong with it? I don't know. Well, then, I just want you to look at it is all, or call a psychologist in to look at it. Why would a psychologist want to look at a nursery? You know very well what he'd want. His wife paused in the middle of the kitchen and watched the stove busy humming to itself, making supper for four. It's just that the nursery is different now than it was. All right, let's have a look. They walked down the hall of their soundproofed Happy Life home, which had cost them $30,000 installed. This house which clothed and fed and rocked them to sleep and played and sang and was good to them. Their approach sensitized a switch somewhere, and the nursery light flicked on when they came within 10 feet of it. Similarly, behind them in the halls, lights went on and off as they left them behind with a soft automaticity. Well, said George Hadley, they stood on the thatched floor of the nursery. It was 40 feet across by 40 feet long and 30 feet high. It had cost half again as much as the rest of the house. But nothing's too good for our children, George had said. The nursery was silent. It was empty as a jungle glade at hot, high noon. The walls were blank and two-dimensional. Good boy. Now, as George and Lydia Hadley stood in the center of the room, the walls began to purr and recede into crystalline distance, it seemed, and presently an African Veldt appeared in 3 dimensions, on all sides in colors reproduced to the final pebble and bit of straw. The ceiling above them became a deep sky with a hot yellow sun. George Hadley felt the perspiration start on his brow. Let's get out of the sun. This is a little too real, but I don't see anything wrong. Wait a moment, you'll see, said his wife. Now the hidden odor phonics were beginning to blow a wind of odor at the two people in the middle of the baked Veltland. The hot straw smell of lion grass, the cool green smell of the hidden water hole, the great rusty smell of animals, the smell of dust like a red paprika in the hot air. And now the sounds, the thump of distant antelope on grassy sod, the papery rustling of vultures. A shadow passed through the sky. The shadow flickered on George Hadley's upturned, sweating face. Filthy creatures, he heard his wife say. The vultures. You see, there are lions far over that way. Now they're on their way to the water hole. They've just been eating, said Lydia. I don't know what. Some animal. George Hadley put his hand up to shield off the burning light from his squinted eyes. A zebra or a baby giraffe, maybe. Are you sure? His wife sounded particularly tense. No, it's a little late to be sure, he said, amused. Nothing over there I can see but cleaned bone and the vultures dropping for what's left. Did you hear that scream? She asked. No, about a minute ago. Sorry, no. The lions were coming, and again George Hadley was filled with admiration for the mechanical genius who had conceived this room, a miracle of efficiency, selling for an absurdly low price. Every home should have one. Oh, occasionally they frightened you with their clinical accuracy. They startled you, gave you a twinge. But most of the time, what fun for everyone. Not only your own son and daughter, but for yourself when you felt like a quick jaunt to a foreign land, a quick change of scenery. Well, here it was. And here were the lions now, 15 feet away, so real, so feverishly and startlingly real that you could feel the prickling fur on your hand, and your mouth was stuffed with the dusty upholstery smell of their heated pelts. And the yellow of them was in your eyes like the yellow of an exquisite French tapestry, the yellow of lions and summer grass, and the sound of the matted lion lungs exhaling on the silent noontide, and the smell of meat from their panting, dripping mouths. The lions stood looking at George and Lydia with terrible green-yellow eyes. "Watch out!" screamed Lydia. The lions came running at them. Lydia bolted and ran. Instinctively, George sprang after her. Outside in the hall, with the door slammed, he was laughing and she was crying, and they both stood appalled at the other's reaction. "George!" "Lydia! Oh, my poor, sweet Lydia. They almost got us. Walls, Lydia. Remember, crystal walls. That's all they are. Oh, they look real, I must admit. Africa in your parlor, but it's all dimensional, super fractionary, super sensitive color film and mental tape film behind glass screens. It's all odor phonics and sonics, Lydia. Here's my handkerchief. I'm afraid." She came to him and put her body against him and cried steadily. "Did you see? Did you feel? It's too real. Now, Lydia, you've got to tell Wendy and Peter not to read any more on Africa." Of course. He patted her. "Promise?" "Sure. And lock the nursery for a few days until I can get my nerves settled. You know how difficult Peter is about that. When I punished him a month ago by locking the nursery for even a few hours, the tantrum he threw, and Wendy too, they live for the nursery. It's got to be locked. That's all there is to it." "All right." Reluctantly, he locked the huge door. "You've been working too hard. You need a rest." I don't know. I don't know, she said, blowing her nose, sitting down in a chair, and immediately began to rock and comfort herself. "Maybe I don't have enough to do. Maybe I have time to think too much. Why don't we shut the whole house off for a few days and take a vacation?" "You mean you want to fry eggs for me?" "Yes," she nodded. "And darn my socks?" "Yes." A frantic, watery-eyed nodding. "And sweep the house." "Yes, oh yes. But I thought that's why we bought this house, so we wouldn't have to do anything." "That's just it. I feel like I don't belong here. The house is wife and mother and nursemaid. How can I compete with an African Veldt? Can I give a bath and scrub the children as efficiently or quickly as the automatic scrub bath? I cannot. And it isn't just me, it's you. You've been awfully nervous lately. I suppose I've been smoking too much. You look as if you didn't know what to do yourself in this house either. You smoke a little more every morning and drink a little more every afternoon and need a little more sedative every night. You're beginning to feel unnecessary, too. Am I? He paused and tried to feel into himself to see what was really there. Oh, George, she looked beyond him at the nursery door. Those lions can't get out of there, can they? He looked at the door and saw it tremble as if something had jumped against it from the other side. Of course not, he said. At dinner they ate alone, for Wendy and Peter were at a special plastic carnival across town and had televised home to say they'd be late to go ahead eating. So George Hadley, bemused, sat watching the dinner room table produce warm dishes of food from its mechanical interior. We forgot the ketchup, he said. Sorry, said a small voice within the table, and ketchup appeared. As for the nursery, thought George Hadley, it won't hurt for the children to be locked out of it for a while. Too much of anything isn't good for anyone, and it was clearly indicated that the children had been spending a little too much time on Africa. That sun, he could feel it on his neck, still like a hot paw, and the lions, and the smell of blood. Remarkable how the nursery caught the telepathic emanations of the children's minds and created life to fill their every desire. The children thought lions, and there were lions. The children thought zebras, and there were zebras. Sun, giraffes, death, and death. That last, he chewed tastelessly on the meat that the table had cut for him. Death thoughts. They were awfully young, Wendy and Peter, for death thoughts. Oh, no, you were never too young, really. Long before you knew what death was, you were wishing it on someone else. When you were 2 years old, you were shooting people with cap pistols. But this, the long, hot African veldt, the awful death in the jaws of a lion, and repeated again and again. Where are you going? He didn't answer Lydia. Preoccupied, he let the lights glow softly on ahead of him, extinguished behind him as he padded to the nursery door. He listened against it. Far away, a lion roared. He unlocked the door and opened it, and we'll leave it there for now.